All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Senior Tech Coffee. Thank you for joining us today. We've got several guests in the audience, and our guest speaker today, Carlos Banuelos. Um, and Carlos, welcome to the program. Appreciate you joining us today. We're going to be talking about smartphone options for older adults. So let's just get through some preliminary information here. I'm Patrick Baker. I'm your host of Senior Tech Coffee. We are recording this if you're just joining. And so this will also be available on the Prime of Life Tech YouTube channel later today if you want to catch part of it later, or if you want to recommend it to some folks that you know. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I want to mention that Prime of Life Tech is currently offering subscription services for managed services for your devices, whether that is computers, smartphones, or tablets, as well as other things. And you can contact me at primeoflifetech.com. And so, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking with our guest this morning, Carlos Bañuelos. And Carlos, welcome to the program. Appreciate you joining us today.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me. I know we've talked about doing this for a couple of years now, so I'm glad it came to fruition finally.
Absolutely, yeah. Carlos and I, we know each other through networking circles, and we've had the opportunity to chat one-on-one on several occasions. Carlos has been a guest on, an audience guest and participant on Senior Tech Coffee in the past as well. So I'm really happy that you were able to join us and we're able to talk about this today. But I'd like to get a little background about you for myself and the audience as well. So kind of just tell us your origin story, how you got into technology generally, and what led you to start Mobile Office Strategist.
Cool. I got to go backwards to the last position before I joined Verizon about 5 years ago. Back in 2009, we all kind of remember a little thing that happened in 2008 with a crash. And I noticed a lot of people really weren't maximizing the technology in their offices. So I really focused on the IT consulting part of that. I shifted my gear from everything that I was doing at the time. Prior to that, I'd been doing construction for low voltage for commercial projects. So everything wired at that point. And that was kind of the impetus of what I started hearing in 2014, 2015. People were asking me on the consulting side, Carlos, how do I make this work? All the systems that you set up in my office, all the systems you set up on my laptop, how do I make it work on my phone? Well, my iPhone 3 specifically, I remember that question. And I hated having to say, no, you really can't. It was not the answer I liked. So I realized there was a gap in my own knowledge. So when I moved to Denver, the opportunity to work for Verizon really came up, and I said, this is perfect. 5 years, 4 years working for Verizon, that'll give me that cellular background to take everything that I understood on the IT consulting world, and literally it's our tagline, shove it into your phone.
Let me ask you a question though. I mean, iPhone 3, so we're talking circa what, about 2009? You said the date, 2009 or so.
Exactly.
So, I mean, was the mobile technology really even there yet in terms of being able? That's what I thought. Yeah.
I mean, to be able to just sync, we take this for granted today that our CRM system is tied to our phone so that we can access all the same contacts from almost any device. But let's go back for a second. If you lose your phone 15 years ago, what happens to your contacts? They're gone.
Poof. Yeah.
Right? So you had to back them up manually, plug in a cable, and put it on your system. So, that was one of the things I used to teach business owners and salespeople. It's like, hey, at the end of the day, after you put in all your notes for your sales calls, all the good stuff that you need to make money, don't forget your money maker is still your clients. So sync your phone by plugging it in at night. It was one of those things that you would have to really do manually. And it's just, a lot has changed, obviously.
Yeah, a lot has changed for sure. So you now Mobile Office Strategist, you started that during the pandemic, right?
Yeah. So last year was pretty rough on the business side of the world, as we all know. I worked Verizon Business Development. That was my focus, helping small, medium businesses really focus on, using that $500 to $1,000 phone to the best of its ability to run their business, not just as a talk and text device. So that was kind of my main goal. The biggest issue was last year, I kept getting the calls from upstairs. Hey, Carlos, your numbers are down. Well, yeah, most of my companies are focused on staying afloat, not buying the new iPhone 11 or 12. That's not their focus.
A
And
priority.
yeah, and it was kind of tough. And that was the disconnect that I finally realized that there's a gap in the customer service opposed to, hey, we just need to sell you a phone. And that's not just Verizon, that's AT&T, that's T-Mobile, that's everybody. All the carriers are about getting you, and it's what's called a new logo, a new client or a new business added to the roster. That's why when you look at the NASDAQ and all these, they don't look at what they're making on that monthly. They're looking, hey, how many new clients did you bring in?
Wow.
And that's not a good way in my book to take care of the client, especially the businesses that are just focused on, hey, I gotta make sure that I can afford my phone bill, let alone I'm not even thinking about buying a new phone this week.
Right. Yeah, that's it. And if it's just a numbers game, yeah, the client kind of gets lost in that picture.
They
for
do
sure.
get lost, and that was the biggest thing that bugged me about it.
Gotcha. Well, I want to jump right into the kind of the heart of what we're talking about today, and that's smartphone options for older adults. Now, there are definitely some options that are more suited for older adults, some that are not. And there's some different sort of angles or aspects to look at there. One thing we're going to talk about is usability. When I say usability, if you're not familiar with that term, it basically comes down to what are some features that smartphones or tablets, for that matter, have, or computers that make make these devices easier for people who have, say, problems with vision or hearing, or in the case of older adults, even capacitive problems with touch screens. What are some features on these devices that can make them easier to use? So that's one aspect. And then we're going to also talk about like some of the plans and, kind of the financial side of things in terms of plans that are maybe better suited for an older adult user. And a couple of other things we're going to throw in there too. So, and I'm sure questions will come up as we go. And again, to the audience, if you do have questions as we go, you can use the raise your hand feature if you like, or you can just unmute yourself and ask your question when you can kind of jump right in there. So there's also the chat. So I'll be checking the chat as well. So anyhow, so let's jump right in. So in terms of, let's talk about the usability side of things. So what are some of the best phone options just for simplicity's sake, just ease of use?
Here's where, doing a little bit more research, and it was funny because recently both my roommates are plus 60, right?
Okay.
And before I used to have them on Verizon on kind of one of the lowest plans that was available. But now that they're both retired, a lot of things changed, right? And that's kind of what the point is on simplicity. On a day-to-day basis, myself, as to what I do running my business, I can do everything from my phone. That is my powerhouse. That is my laptop. That is my computer. You have to shift the mindset for a second and think about what retirees are doing, what they're doing on their daily basis. If they're making calls to their friends, they're texting family and friends, and they're zooming, maybe doing a little bit of recipe searching, but nothing really robust in terms of power hungry apps of any sort.
Games.
Yeah, games is one of those things, but again, not really power hungry games, right?
Right.
So you have to look at it a little differently. In terms of simplicity, the biggest thing that I noticed for my roommates and everybody that I dealt with in that demographic was it needed to be a bigger screen, period. So the larger the screen, the better. LG, which probably by far is one of my favorites, and it's kind of sad that they're slowly going away, but you can still find the LG models, are great. They actually have a simple mode. The simple mode does two things. It makes all the characters and the fonts larger, and all the buttons in every single part of the entire phone system is larger, almost triple the size. It's amazing. Sometimes I'll actually use it when I'm out and about and I want to save my battery life, because it also saves battery life. But it's really easy to use when I'm running around to concerts or just running around town, because the buttons are so much bigger. I don't have to look at a little tiny button, and it's easy to switch back. But LG, and then the one that I think are all familiar with is Jitterbug, right?
Mhm.
Jitterbug does a great job of making all their phones as simple as possible, whether it's their flip phone, whether it's their smartphone. And I say that in quotes on their smartphone because it is a very dumbed down version of Android.
Right,
It is not a normal Android phone,
right.
but both of those are very simple to use in terms of just out of the box. The LG, you just switch one mode. The Jitterbug's out of the box is ready to go. So
Now, now the LG, now let's just back up for 1 second though. Now the LG that you were just talking about and the Jitterbug, they're both Android phones,
correct.
correct? But let's just talk about Android itself for a moment. There are gazillion flavors of Android, right? And when I say flavors, I mean that no two versions of Android really look, or in some ways sometimes behave the same as another one.
Right.
Now, like Google, and I can't think of any other company right off the top of my head, uses what at least I refer to as the stock version of Android. Does any other company use that?
Not really. Most everybody puts some sort of skin over the top of it to give
Right.
them a little extra flavor that sets them apart. Motorola does it, LG, Samsung, Oppo, you name any brand. They'll add a little bit of flavor to say that their version of the Google Android system does this, right?
Mm-hmm.
LG, that whole easy mode is one
Right.
perfect example of that. Samsung has their own store, their own system, their own backgrounds. I mean, all kinds of things that you wouldn't be able to do on a stock Android device.
Now the Samsungs, for example, a lot of people use the Samsungs. Does it have an equivalent of that simple mode,
Not out of
like
the
the
box.
LG?
I mean,
Yeah.
you can purchase. I mean, I've seen them for like 99 cents, $1.99. An app that overlays into the system that lets you change the sizing, change the system. So it essentially overrides the Samsung skin and uses the
Right.
new skin. One of the
Interesting.
things that about those apps, though, is I've noticed they don't play well with all the apps.
Hmm.
That's kind of the downfall of that.
Sure. Yeah. And then, of course, Samsung's version of Android, along with the stock version of Android and others, they do have usability features
Right.
where you can go in and you can play with text size and screen readers and things of that nature.
Yeah, they have all of their disability and accessibility features. That is a stock Android type of feature,
Okay.
but it's not as robust and as instant, if you want to call it, as the LG. The LG
Right.
literally just changes the entire skin to give you the bigger fonts. And otherwise, you're dealing with that all as an individual pop-up, if you will, for each little instance. And you're not, even myself, I don't think about what else could I possibly do to make this easier. Whereas that easy mode on LG just does everything across the board in every app, every instance, no matter
Right.
where you are on the phone at that point, it's a lot easier to use.
Right. Now, and then now, so that's versus say Apple, where Apple, everything Apple is the same, right? I mean, you've got, I mean, if it's iOS, even if it's 3 versions back, it's still going to behave generally more or less the same.
And
It's going to look,
I
yeah,
think that's part of the second part of that simplicity. A lot of people do have iPhones, right? And if your family is already in the Apple family, then
right,
it's so much easier to be able to use some of the features of the Apple devices. Now, that being said, you can't change a lot of, yes, you can do the font. Yes, you can do the accessibility. Yes, you can do a lot of that stuff. but you really have to understand how to get into those modes. And the screen itself isn't going to let you change a lot, because again, that structure is what makes it simple if you already understand the Apple environment. That's the big if.
That's a big if. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Yeah, my wife Leanne, she doesn't think the Apple stuff is intuitive to work with at all. And I get it. Yep, folks definitely have their preferences. In terms of you mentioned something about an emergency button feature. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, so Jitterbug has a cool feature that I've always loved, and I've been that guy in the store, business owner, telling them, hey, if you need to get your parents or your grandparents a phone, look at the Jitterbug. If they're somewhere in that point where falling down is going to be an issue, where we've all heard it, where they cannot get up, that emergency button is right there on the home page or on the hard button for a flip phone. It just automatically calls like OnStar, their support center. It's like, hey, what's going on?
Interesting.
It's an instant connection. So you not only have the regular communications of being able to talk and text and maybe get online, but now you've got an instant access to a support system if you need help. There is a basic feature to do something like that in Apple. It's on the homepage. You've probably seen it. You probably ignored it. Emergency, bottom left, right?
Right.
It's there, so a couple of those things are most of the times. But the Jitterbug and the iPhone have it right there on the homepage, so it's a little easier to use.
Right. Yeah, and we should. Well, actually, for maybe while you're talking here in a moment, I'll look for like a screenshot of a Jitterbug, just if folks aren't familiar with that. But anyhow, what's that?
I've got it up right now because I figured that would be one.
Oh yeah, yeah. Let me make sure you can share. Yeah. Go ahead and share that if you don't mind, just so folks can see what we're talking about.
So if you can see, again, this is still an Android phone, but this button here is the alert button, right?
Gotcha.
Same thing on their other devices, right? Right there, that big,
very cool.
So that is one thing about Jitterbug that I do like. Again, for those family members that do need a little assistance just in case of emergency, if they're by themselves, and even if they're not by themselves, just having that extra little feature that none of the other phone systems have. I mean, emergency mode on the iPhone is nice, but that just dials 911. It doesn't get you a support center that understands what you're going through, right?
Any downsides to the Jitterbug phone?
Yeah, price. We're going to get into this about the MVNOs. Price is a little bit more expensive, but that is why that emergency support center.
Got it. Cool. Well, let's jump into the plan stuff.
Can I just ask a quick question, Patrick?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Carlos, when you said the price of the Jitterbug is more expensive, can you give us like a ballpark of what someone might pay?
It's $15 to $20, $15 for their flip phone, $20 for the smartphone. And I keep putting that in quotes because again, it's a very pared down Android version of what you expect on a Samsung or an LG or an iPhone, right? That is about $5 to $10 extra than what you can get on some of these MVNOs. My roommates are now on a 1 gig plan through another carrier, and they're paying $10 a month.
Wow, interesting.
Again, there are other plans out there. You're paying a little extra for that customer service support to be able to do the emergency call.
Got it.
Thank you.
And then we had a comment as well from Pam that you have to remind family members weekly/monthly where the emergency button is until they have it memorized. So that's
how many times we all ignore that emergency button on the bottom left.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it. I've accidentally tapped it, and it takes you like to the next screen where you can actually do something on, like stock Android or on the iPhone. I've got, and just curious, well, what happens if I do this? So, but anyway, so let's talk about plans. So what, there's like some 55 plus options.
Right.
That you mentioned in our correspondence with each other. Please
So
tell us about that.
we're all familiar with the three carriers, right? We've got Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. All of them have a 55 plus program.
Hmm.
This was where the bias came into me, which kind of shocked me when I did a little bit more research. I knew that it existed within Verizon. I just had never really sold it with the business side of things, right? Through Verizon and through AT&T, it is only available to Florida residents.
Really?
T-Mobile is available nationwide. So it's the oddest thing. It's essentially an unlimited plan for $60 to $80 for 2 lines, max of 2 lines. But again, you have to be in Florida for Verizon and AT&T, or a Florida address, as a lot of people I noticed all have Florida addresses and they live in other states, so they've worked the system a little bit.
That's
But
interesting.
it's kind of sad that the two carriers don't think that's a demographic that they want to get into. And it just shocks me that 99% of the country doesn't have access to that plan, those 2 plans.
Well, and especially given kind of the sort of the wave of people over 55 presently, and for the next however many years that's gonna be happening. Yeah, I'm sure they'll have to adapt sooner than later.
Well, and it's
What
with the MVNOs. So that's where the
well,
MVNOs kind of fill that gap.
tell us what MVNO stands for,
Mobile Virtual Network Operator.
and what does that mean?
All that means is they are leasing the lines or the air waves from Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, right?
And those are the ones who actually own the lines. They
Correct.
own the networks.
You got it. So, I tell people those are awesome deals because you're not going to be able to get that kind of pricing. And again, the big 3 are focused on the unlimited plans for the under 55, right? They're trying to get everybody into those bigger plans of the unlimited data, unlimited talk, unlimited text. Whereas again, over 55, we don't necessarily need all that data, right? Case in point, I'll just look at myself. I'm not quite there yet, but to liken it to what happens when you retire or get shoved into your home for a year, right? I went from about 60 gig a month on my main Verizon line of usage to about 15.
Wow.
Right? That was huge. But
Yeah,
again,
that's
the shift when you go into retirement. You're no longer out and about as much, maybe on the weekends, restaurant and stuff. So that's where that MVNO really helps. Just like Jitterbug, they only charge you for the data. They go down as low as 500 megabytes. I mean, so that's only if you're just sending email, maybe, right?
Mhm.
But if you're on FaceTime or Zoom and stuff like that, then it behooves you to get into some of their unlimited plans. Now, here's the kicker. All of those plans have some sort of prioritization. What does that mean? Do I get slower automatically? Not necessarily. If you're buying, let's say, a 1 gig plan, because you're sitting at home, you're retired, you go out to the restaurant once a month, right? And you just use Yelp and Google to get there, and that's about it. You're definitely going to use less than 1 gig. But let's say you happen to go for an extended weekend and you're on your Google Maps the entire time. You're going to use more than the 1 gig. You still don't get charged like the old days. What ends up happening is you get slowed for that anything above and beyond the 1 gig, right?
Oh, interesting.
So you get slowed down to, depending on the service, down to 2 or 3G speeds. I don't know if I could ever go back to that.
I was going to say slowed to the point where it's unusable, or
it's still usable, but you definitely are going to start seeing that spinning circle of of weight, and it's just the part of the reasoning of why they're able to lease it at such a low price is the big 3 aren't using it. Their main clients are unlimited. They want the highest speeds. They want the 4G LTE. They want the 5G. They want the 5G millimeter wave. They want the fastest speeds. They're willing to pay for it, and they're out and about and they're using it.
Right.
And again, if you're a retiree, you go for a long weekend. At the most, you're probably going to want to do is maybe download a movie. So it's going to take you 45 minutes to download that movie instead of 10 minutes.
Unless you jump onto Wi-Fi. Right.
Well, if you're camping,
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to do that. But
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So that's the big thing with MVNOs. You have to be careful with that, because so many people go, why would I pay Verizon, XYZ when I can get it for a quarter of the price on, pick one, Boom Mobile, Boost Mobile, Straight Talk, all these different ones. And it's really because of that prioritization. That's all it boils down to.
Interesting. And then you also mentioned that there are some Wi-Fi calling options. I mean, I'm familiar with Google Voice. That's free. Anyone can use that. I think all you have to have is a phone number to be able to associate that account with.
Correct.
But are there other Wi-Fi calling options besides pay options?
Yeah, all the major carriers now give you Wi-Fi calling for free. It used to be an option. Like if you wanted to be able to go home and use your Wi-Fi to make calls from your phone number, right? The system still sees as your phone. It uses your Wi-Fi to make that call out to into the cellular world, right? The main.
So we talking VoIP, voice over IP?
Yeah, it's like a VoIP, but once it gets out into the outside of your building, outside of your home, it goes back to a cellular signal.
Interesting.
So it just transfers it in through your Wi-Fi back out to a tower. Says, okay, cool, I got the signal. Let me go back to cellular, right? Then what you're talking about is Wi-Fi calling with a VoIP. That's voice over IP, right? That is a end-to-end on a Wi-Fi signal of some sort, right?
Right.
So what a lot of folks, and I see this happen a lot, don't realize is the difference between a data usage for Wi-Fi calling and data usage for a VoIP call, right? So it's very minimal for a Wi-Fi call opposed to a VoIP call. There's a little bit more data being used on the VoIP call. Both of those are available to pretty much everybody on the three carriers. The MVNOs, if somebody switches from a major carrier to some of the MVNOs, they don't offer that feature and you have to pay extra for it because they know that they're already selling the data for such a low price. They've got to make up for it somehow. So if you do want Wi-Fi calling, you have to be careful that the MVNO that you're getting does offer it, right? So you could theoretically get a 1 gig plan because you're at home and you barely use it. But if you're using the Wi-Fi calling feature because you have no cellular signal up in the mountains again, then you're in trouble because then it'll actually start charging you for that. So little tidbit of info on that.
Interesting. So I guess do you have any other thoughts just generally or advice for folks regarding plans, phone choices in terms of anything from budget options to even if you want to go Cadillac with that kind of thing. And then it looks like we got another question from Jenny that we'll field here in just a second. But yeah, speak to that if you would, please.
So, I tell a lot of folks, and especially now that Mobile Office Strategist is one thing that I'm kind of proud of, is that we are completely agnostic. We could care less which service you're on. We're authorized resellers for all three carriers, and we have access to pretty much all of the MVNOs and VoIP systems. So, I mean, if there's a point where you're like sitting there going, yeah, I don't really want to pay for cell service, I'm never out of the house, you can actually still just do a VoIP line and be done, right? That's as inexpensive as you get. But
can you give us an idea of what that would be cost-wise? Just to have a VoIP line? Nothing. And why is that?
You can do Google Voice. You can do some of these other ones online, and you have access to be able to make phone calls, and people can text you on your computer, on your tablet, right? We haven't even talked about the bigger screens on tablets. Theoretically, like that. And that it takes over the cellular capabilities. But again, you really can't get a connection if you don't have Wi-Fi. So you can't make a call. So that again is really when you just know that you've got a landline or some other way of communications, it's not your primary line, right? So that's as cheap as you can go. With all the other carriers, all the MVNOs, it really depends on your needs. And I tell this to business owners specifically, and it applies to everybody else. If you're in Chicago, AT&T is probably a better choice for you. If you're in San Diego, T-Mobile is probably a better choice for you. If you're in Colorado, Verizon hands down beats everybody here in Colorado, right? Now, the second part of that is, okay, well, I'm thinking about going with one of the cheaper MVNOs, Carlos. How do I choose? It's the same question. You base it off those three because each carrier is going to lease off of those three. So once you find out what those three are, which one's the best in your area, you're done. Then you pick a corresponding MVNO. So that's really what it boils down to. And a lot of people don't do this, and I see it happen a lot, is they don't look at their actual data usage. They get into these plans, somebody at the store, somebody on the phone says, oh no, we've got a deal for the unlimited plan for XYZ amount. And of course you're like, okay, cool. Or this is the biggest issue that I see the big three doing. The promotions to get that free phone require you to get the unlimited plan.
Right.
Which suddenly
for the free phone, right?
Yes. So
For the free phone, yeah.
So your data usage might be 2 gig a month, but you're spending an extra $50 a month to be on the unlimited plan. So you paid $50 a month for that phone.
Right. On the, well, we'll come back to that actually. Let me ask, or let me relay some of the questions we got from the audience here. So Jenny wants to know, can I ask regarding LG models, how do you get to the simple mode?
It's in the settings, and actually I have my main LG. Let me see where it's at really quick. Yep. So if you go into any LG, go into display on the settings, home screen, select home, and then the bottom one will just say easy home mode. That will change your entire setup to be simple. And just as an idea, I don't know, let's see if I hate doing this because normally you can't tell. So my screen looks pretty busy right now, right? We'll do it on mine. Takes a couple seconds to essentially change everything. And now I've got just the basics on the bottom of the screen, about twice the size on the icons, and even the, right?
The text is larger too.
Yep. All the superfluous stuff that I had on the screen, on the main screen, is gone. The entire format of the phone changes to that. Even my messaging is now double the size. Right?
Interesting.
So again, what I love about that easy home mode or easy mode is it does it across the board for all the apps. And unlike most of the apps that you buy aftermarket, it doesn't always play well with all the apps. The easy mode on LG does.
Right. Gotcha. And then we had another question. This is regarding Wi-Fi calling from Pam. What happens if there's a storm, for example, and the Wi-Fi goes out?
If you're on a VoIP line, then yeah, there's not much you can do, right?
Right.
If you've got cellular, I mean, obviously we're experiencing this right now in Louisiana. The only towers from right here that are working are the Verizon towers. I was shocked. Yeah, because I mean, and I read this years ago that each tower, they invest about an extra 10 grand in reinforcement based on the location where it's at. If you're in Oklahoma, obviously they got to worry about wind. If If you're in Louisiana, the Panhandle or something like that, or down in the Gulf, you got to worry about water. So they focus on that. Southern California, guess what they worry about? Earthquakes. And they on fire now, but they build them up to withstand a couple different things. And it's part of what makes Verizon so robust is they do put that extra effort to make sure that, and they get it too, that network is still live no matter what happens, because we all now communicate through that cell phone. It's so important, especially in emergencies like now.
Well, I mean, it's, that's disaster recovery in a nutshell, right? So for sure. Let's see. I think that was. Oh, and then Sugar Ray had raised his hand. Sugar Ray, did you have a question or a comment, sir?
Yes, my comment was more to the any advice to give for other people in this demographic that are looking into the mobile space. Do your research. A lot of people go into stores and they trust the reps, and from working in the store personally, and I know Carlos can also attest to this, they are paid to sell and tell you certain things. There are contests if you sell more Google phones this month. There are a different deal if you get someone to get the highest unlimited plan on this. So do your own research versus going into the store and trusting the reps, because even though you might get a 50-50 chance of someone looking out for you, you're also getting that person who's just trying to make a paycheck, and whatever they can sell you, they will sell you.
Yep. And that is the whole reason, Patrick, why I brought Sugar Ray on board. He's used to work with me at Verizon, and I brought him on board because we both understand that sometimes it's not about the mighty dollar. It's about getting what's right for the client, right? Being agnostic, again, I could care less. We could care less.
Sure.
We're focused on getting the best deal for that client.
Gotcha. Pam has another question. At what point, though, in parentheses, maybe Patrick and Jenny, do some adults, do some older adults allow their children or support people to decide for them what to get? And actually, Jenny, what's your take on that?
Most of the time I would say never. I think occasionally when they have a really close relationship and the parents come to get advice from their kids, which is not very common and probably a very small percentage of people, they might, but most of the time probably not very often. And sometimes they may listen a lot better to someone like Patrick or Carlos than they would to you as their adult kid.
Why do you think that is? That they think? Sorry, go ahead, Carlos.
I was going to say, Jenny, one suggestion that I always made to the elderly that were coming in, that they're finally getting rid of the flip phone, moving into a smartphone, we would get them again the better deal. They always came in, like Sugar Ray said, for that free phone. And I'd have to explain to them, it's like, in the long run, this is going to cost you more because you're paying $50 more for an unlimited plan, whatever the case might be, right? But I also suggested every single time, and most of the times the parents or the grandparents looking like, oh, I never thought of this. Add an admin that understands how to deal with technology, right? So somebody, either, a family member, a son, a daughter, somebody that you trust that can handle your account just in case you don't understand what's going on, or you need to get something done on the account but just don't know how to explain it. That's one of the biggest things that I see too, is moving from that wired world to a wireless world, explaining things sometimes that client has a tough time of trying to tell us or convey what they're actually looking for. So, we have to be a translator. It's like, okay, so what you really want is this. Oh yeah, that's what I want. Okay. So having that admin help you with the account does make a difference. Not necessarily help you buy anything or whatever, but having somebody there to help you deal with the minutia of the billing, the minutia of whatever's going on with customer service. I roll my eyes because that's probably the bane of our existence.
And Jenny, and I guess Pam too. I think it sounds like, if I interpret, Jenny, what you were saying a moment ago, I think that and this is again just my interpretation, I think when older adults perceive someone to be an authority figure on a subject, I think they tend to listen to that person more, at least give them a little more, say, credence than they do their kid. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that, Patrick.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So anyhow, so yeah, but you know, folks like Sugar Ray, Carlos, myself. I mean, that's why we're here, is to help people, you know, find technology that's a good fit for them, and it's, you know, easy to use. And if it's not easy to use, to help them either make it easier to use or find a way to get them into something that's just easier to use. So but it's all about, you know, understanding and making things simple to work with. So anyhow, I want to change gears here unless there's any other questions from the audience. And if folks want to jump on camera for Q&A at this point, that's totally welcome. As for any of the entrepreneurs in the audience or who are watching the replay, can you just give us an idea of what your business does just generally?
I think this is every business. It doesn't make a difference if it's 2 employees or 1,000. You know, we look at ways to use mobile technology to increase profits, maximize every dollar that we spend, and then of course lower expenses, right?
Right.
That's the biggest goal of what we do. Of course, the mobile concierge service that we offer takes the billing and all the dealing with stores, all of that off of a business owner's plate, right?
Can you just summarize again for us what that is?
So the mobile concierge was the really of what I started Mobile Office Strategist with the business development teams with any carrier. The focus is again, buy a phone, get a higher unlimited plan. That's how we got paid. That's how Verizon got paid. With Mobile Office Strategist, you, just like yourself, Patrick, we created a package where you pay us monthly or yearly. We call Verizon, we call AT&T. We deal with the customer service holds that sometimes are 3 or 4 hours, right? And I tell folks, you know, the monthly fee that we charge is really minuscule compared to the time that you will save. And you can call us, take a 5-minute call, say, hey, Carlos, I just hired a new guy. I need a new phone. How fast can you get me one? Tomorrow, 10 a.m., good enough? Sure, done. It's a 5-minute call to us. And then me and Sugar Ray get on the phone, and it's about 1 hour to 3 hours in the background to get that one phone ordered, right?
Physically to the new employee.
Correct, right?
Wow, that's
So
impressive.
we do
Yeah.
all of that total, right? So no longer are you driving to a store. And I tell people, yes, your store visit might be 1 hour to 2 hours, but you had to drive there. You had to cancel any appointments you had. How much could you have made in those 2 to 4 hours in your business? I never thought of it that way, right? And it's an important tool that you need, just like anything else. You can just order it online. Why didn't you go to Home Depot? Oh, it's faster. We're no different, right? The other pieces of the puzzle, being a business, we also look at managing expenses for them. We help them look at every single monthly bill that they deal with besides just cellular, right? We partner with a company called Schoolie Mitchell that does everything for us, absolutely free. And then they just take a percentage of that savings. On average, I've seen companies do about $500 a month. If I gave you $500 as a business, said, hey, we're going to save you $500, most companies are going to say yes, right? That's the easy part. So now we've saved you a little bit of time on the mobile concierge. We saved you some money on your monthly expenses. Then we get into the nitty gritty. Let's look at ways to control those devices, right? Cybersecurity, mobile device management, and then of course the biggest picture, which is our strategy consulting, to really focus on software implementation to bring that office into the phone. You know, that's where the big money is. I mean, some of the projects we've worked on, when you look at the time savings, it amounts to anywhere between $80,000 to $250,000 in time savings, especially when you've got 10, 20, 40 employees wasting time on an Excel spreadsheet when you could be using a project management software package, all from your phone. That's
Wow.
the big goal for every client that I work with.
Cool. Very cool. Now let me bring it back to the older adult community. Do you have a similar service and in that sort of price range for those folks?
It's funny that you mentioned this because Sugar Ray and I have been helping some of our old clients that all came from the retail side. And so we are going to be implementing a personal account concierge for, the accounts that are only 1 to 5 lines, right? And that's average for most family members. So it's a lot less than the business concierge package, but we're going to do that as a monthly, or you can also do it as a per visit, one or the other, right? And that I think is going to change really soon. I've got a little bit in the background already working on the website and some of the paperwork. So it's funny that when you called me, we'd already been started talking about this. I think it's, again, that market that not only has Verizon completely forgot about, and my, own, bow, I did forget a little bit because I was so focused on the business side of things that I forgot the retail client is being underserved too.
Cool. Well, good for you. I think that's really great to hear. We'll be curious to see what that looks like here in the weeks and months to come. So you kind of filled in, you kind of answered my last question, which was what's on the horizon for you guys, and that's a big thing. So I'm really happy to hear that.
No, it's amazing because, again, so many small businesses, they really expect that kind of help, but nobody on the retail and definitely nobody on the 55 plus expects that kind of help. And when we can offer it, it's going to be a ray of light.
Very cool. I'm trying to share my slideshow again. I'm not sure if that's what you guys were seeing or not because my screen's behaving weirdly. Can you see the slides?
Screen sharing, but no, nothing on the screen.
Nothing on the screen. Okay, hold on. Let me bail. Because I want to kind of wrap.
Any questions from anybody? You can go as deep as you want. We've got 2 experts here. We've got myself and of course Sugar Ray.
There we go. All right, and let's see if I can get the right thing going. Hold on, I'm sorry, 1 sec. This is hilarious.
How does like smartphone behavior for the user differ from older adults to perhaps other generations? Are they sort of doing the same things on there? Is it primarily email and Facebook, or?
And if this came up a while back and it came up again, and I was a little shocked about this because I didn't even think about it. Again, the biggest thing I think the disconnect with most people that have their smartphone on a daily basis on under 55 is we know the power of what it can do. Maybe we don't use it all, but we know what it can do, right? Older folks don't even know some of the possibilities, and they also are a little scared of putting that information out there. So what I've noticed is some of the older folks won't put their banking information on there. They won't enter a credit card. They won't put any personal information for fear that it's either going to get lost if they lose the phone, because they don't know anything about the cloud, right? It's a given for us, but not for them. Or they're thinking as soon as they put it on their phone and lose their phone, they're going to be giving those hackers all of that information. Again, to a point, we kind of are in this new world, but a lot of the protection that's put into place with cybersecurity tries to keep that at bay. But the biggest issue I see is most 55 plus do not want to put a password or a fingerprint to protect their phone. And it's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. I have to, try to tell them, say, hey, it's not as bad as you think it is. I know the news makes it out to be like we've all just given all of our information out there. You kind of have, but you haven't. Put a password, put a passcode, put a fingerprint, something, and that'll protect you.
Right. Yeah, we didn't even get to that whole part of the conversation. That's a whole conversation unto itself, the security side of things. Are you seeing my slides?
Yep, now we're seeing it.
Cool. I just wanted to share Carlos's contact info with the audience and for the folks who might be watching the replay on YouTube. So if you want to get a hold of Carlos, learn more about his concierge services, both for business and now individuals, give him a shout. And Also, I just wanted to mention coming up in October and November, my guests for the next episodes of Senior Tech Coffee, switching kind of more to the business focus. And as I mentioned, both to Carlos and to Marie as well, and other folks that, older adults are often also small business owners. So definitely relevant information for people of any age. In October with Marie Leslie, the Small Business Simplifier. And then coming up in November, we're going to be talking about a product called Care Penguin, which is essentially a non-invasive way of monitoring your older person's water usage. Why would you want to do that? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute, but basically it's just one passive indication that, yep, Dad was up this morning and made a pot of coffee, so he's probably doing okay. But I'll give him a call later just to make sure. Just one device. It's also a smart device. But we'll get into that here when we talk to Marlo in November. My contact information for folks who would like to get a hold of me. Again, I provide IT support for people of any age, but I do focus on the older adult community, senior care professionals, and small businesses, typically 10 or fewer employees. So anyhow, that's how you can get a hold of me. The Senior Tech Coffee schedule and registration information is available there as well. And you can book an appointment and follow me on all my social. I appreciate it. Anyhow, everyone who joined us today, I really appreciate you taking the time. Carlos, again, thanks for joining. Sugar Ray as well. And then everyone else in the audience, appreciate your time, your attention, and great questions. Carlos, any parting thoughts for us?
No, just one last thing. I put it in the chat, but IoT is the future. I mean,
yep.
I go to so many seminars of how all that stuff is going to work on your cell phone. You're going to access all that information from your cell phone. So it's here now, not quite at an inexpensive daily use price,
right,
but it's going to be more and more prevalent. So yeah, great. I'll have to join that one.
Well, and there's products in the future. There's products. There's implementations of smart home technology that you can use right now. And I've done a tech coffee on this, using smart speakers, using things like motion sensors, door and window sensors, where you can, in effect, build a system to be passively notified of when the elder person that you're caring for does certain things. Dad spent 30 minutes in the bathroom this morning. I think something's up. I'm going to give him a call later. Things of that nature. Now, there's some interpretation involved, and there are products that exist right now that do some of that interpretation for you with AI, and also just with programmatic, responses. If this, then that kind of stuff, that's a thing in IoT, in the Internet of Things, is the if this, then that sort of logic. Anyway, so in other words, if Dad walks into the hallway at 2 a.m., turn on the smart night light. Or if Dad walks into the bathroom at 2 a.m., turn on this low-level light that's not going to blind him, so that he can walk in and take care of things and walk out, and the light takes care of itself and he doesn't have to think about it. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that that's here now and definitely in the future. But as you can see, I can ramble on about that forever. So anyhow, I really appreciate you folks joining us today. Thanks again. And please join us again next time. And thanks everyone, Carlos,
Thanks,
everyone
man.
else.
Thanks,
Really appreciate
guys.
it.
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks.
Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Very helpful.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.